Welcome to NatureHacker Mind. I am NatureHacker. So this broadcast is going to be basically a podcast for people who don't have Wi-Fi all the time. What this will be is a half-hour broadcast where you can just sit back, relax, and listen. Even if you don't have a Wi-Fi connection, you can just tune in on your 3G and it won't take up too much bandwidth. So, in this thing, Nature Hacker Mind, I'm just going to discuss what's on my mind. I'm not going to have any agendas. It'll be about what I'm thinking about. But I'm not going to propose any theories that would cause you to have to think carefully about it, or to plug any of my products or advertise in any way. And in my other channel, I don't typically do it, but I do direct you there when it makes sense to my website. But I'm not going to do that in this podcast. I want you to be able to just tune in, relax, be able to just chill out, relax your mind, and not have to parse through any deep thinking or critical thinking or anything like that. This is made to be a relaxing experience that is roughly a half hour long. And my other videos are roughly 15 minutes max. These will be roughly 30 minutes max. So if you are eating or resting or whatnot, you can just turn this on and have some interesting listening. So, what am I going to get into today? Well, today I was watching Rhett and Link, which they are a great YouTube channel. Other YouTube channel I like are Bad Lip Reading. That's always a funny time. But they were talking a lot about themselves and having a partner and things like that, and it's very interesting to have a work partner like that. I don't see that very often, to have two people working together like Rhett and Link to really be able to create amazing content and to basically complement each other's strengths, and also to complement each other's weaknesses, as far as one person's strength can make up for another person's weakness. And the dichotomy is very interesting, because you have Rhett, who is a person that's a lot like me, who is the big ideas guy, that he comes up with ideas and he connects dots and comes up with ideas. And Link, who is more of a detail-oriented person, who really thrives in getting his hands dirty and really putting the axe to the wheel, I guess, and grinding out things. So Rhett comes up with the big ideas and Link makes it happen, so to speak. And they made an agreement that they would not take credit for any aspect, but they would both share the credit for everything that they did together. So I think they have a really good method, and I think that was episode 84 or something. It was the finale for season 2. So if you want to check that out on iTunes, that is the Ear Biscuits. And they really lay out how to work in a team effectively. And I mean, if anybody knows how to work in a team effectively, it is Rhett and Link, who have over 10 million subscribers, and they have as much success as anyone could ever hope to achieve. So they definitely know what they're talking about. One interesting thing that they said is that they actually took a blood oath when they were young. And I might not believe everything that was written in the Bible. I think that the Bible is the best advice that any of these very wise people could have given 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. I think that it was done in all the highest of what can I say? The highest of motive, and that they really did believe every single thing that's in there. And not only is it just good intention, but that these are some, if not the wisest people who have ever lived. People like Joseph, who was also known as Imhotep in Egypt, and whatnot. Many very wise people. John the Beloved, who wrote Revelation. It's an amazing, powerful book. Isaiah, Daniel. These are the people that I look up to in the Bible, as well as David and his son Solomon. Very wise and very passionate and idealistic human beings that I definitely look up to. Definitely. If I can be a warrior like David to war for the truth, then I would gladly accept that mantle. And that's another thing I want to talk about, is just why I'm making this channel, and that is, I feel very passionate about, conspiracy theories that I come up with, and, solving big important problems, like, what are the chemtrails made out of? What are all of the components? How do they affect our health? How do we counteract it? And I'm quite good at that, reverse engineering and developing protocols and things like that. And I'm really good at it, and I can do it really easily and quickly. But it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of mental crunching, just really running the gears in the mind, if so to speak. But there's also that's not all that I think. I think of very deep things. I think of very philosophical things, and it's not just about my activism to help people to wake up, but also just who I am, and to share that, and to somehow to benefit with just who I am, not what I'm doing, not what I'm accomplishing, not what I'm designing and implementing and creating, but more of reflection, a reflection time. So I want you to be able to have that. And what I think I'll do a lot on this channel is also storytelling. I mean, I am 29 years old, and I've been through a lot. I have a lot of stories, and I don't want to forget them. And not that I would forget them. I am pretty confident in my biology to be able to remember long-term memories, but I think it's important to bring them up, to reflect on them, so that I can better apply my experience in the past to the future. And the mind does that unconsciously a lot. It will apply your experience to the challenges and goals and whatnot that you have for yourself in the present, and the work that you're doing. Your mind will automatically, unconsciously apply those things into your present experience. However, I think it is good to remember back to these times and to relive them, the experiences, and to even gain more from them, that other than unconscious, to even have conscious inspiration from the past, and remembering and discovering who we are as people. Because what more is this life about but then to discover how you are unique, so that you're able to apply that uniqueness to make a real impact on the world. And another interesting thing that Rhett and Link were talking about is they received a question about if they could upload their consciousness to a robot. Do they think that that's possible, and what would God think about that? And I think that's an interesting question, because a guy named Mark, on one of my recent videos on my other channel, I was talking about Elon Musk and how I think that he is a government plant who has, a fake. His mom is an actor, is not real, and his dad is also just doesn't exist. And he was like, oh, is he a robot, just a robot clone or something? And he's being serious. He thinks that that's a possible technology. And I'm like, no, I just think he was, a foster child, and they just set him up with all of this. All of this stuff is just a, puppet to pretend that he's the leader of these companies when really it's the government. And but that ties into robot clones and whatnot, and whether that's possible, and if that is kind of going against God, or does it disprove God? And I think atheists would sometimes want to just come up with scenarios to try to anger Christians, people who believe in God and creation and whatnot. They tried to come up with scenarios that would make them uncomfortable and angry. So I think that can be part of this, is just a button pushing exercise. But I do think it's an interesting thought, and I have thought about it, and it's pretty simple. I mean, basically what you would do is you would make a robot that was based on everything that was currently in your mind. So all of your past experiences and everything. And the funny thing would be that this robot would die faster than a person, because in biology you have living tissue that's regenerating. You have little protein machines and whatnot that keeps regenerating the the machine, if you want to call the body a machine. It keeps regenerating, keeps growing, keeps repairing. But in a program, in a robot, there is nothing debugging it. I mean, I guess you could run debugging programs and defragment the hard drive and things like that. But when something breaks, things are lost. So things can be erased and whatnot. So I feel like that even if you could live in a robot, you would be even more fleeting and transitory and mortal than in a living body, because we know that humans can live up to 120 years, but we have not seen a computer still functioning, a complex computer still functioning after 120 years. So I feel like our biology is superior to any robot that we could program our mind into, to tell you the truth. And second to that, even second to that, I feel like we wouldn't be able to live inside of a robot, because that which makes us ourselves is simply the change. You can't have, if you have a body moving at a constant velocity, you don't have acceleration. And in the biology sense, you can have a collection of memories of experiences and whatnot, but without that change, without that directed change in these things, there would be no consciousness. It's like consciousness is acceleration, and you can't have acceleration without a force pushing something. Just as in, you can't have consciousness without a conscious progression, a learning, a building. So if if the body cannot build itself, if the neurons, the mental connections in the robot can't change, can't adapt themselves, can't improve, can't add things to themselves, and there is no consciousness. So consciousness requires learning, it requires adapting, it requires adding to memory. And in the case of a robot, it would be a person that is adding things to the robot's memory. I mean, you could always write a script, a program script for the robot to add certain things to its memory, but the script has to also be able to be changed for consciousness to exist, and we can't have it's a chicken and the egg argument. You know, in the robot human clone, there has to be certain rules set, and in the real biology there are no rules. Everything is labile to change. Everything can change, and that is what makes humans humans. That's what makes consciousness consciousness, is that everything is apt to change. Everything can change. Everything will change. Everything's malleable. And that's what consciousness is. It is that malleability. It is that changingness. And when there is less changing, the velocity of change is less, which is to say the derivative of the acceleration of change is less, then we perceive time to go faster. There is less change, so less is happening in a given amount of time, and we perceive that time to go faster because there is less things happening, so to speak, in that period of time. Time is relative in the sense that one thing, what is going on in my refrigerator, is happening slower than what's outside my refrigerator. Let's say I have a chemical reaction. I am dissolving a mineral, and I put some of the mineral dissolving in the fridge, and I put some of the mineral dissolving on the stovetop. The mineral dissolving in the stovetop will happen faster. So time was occurring. Time basically, I don't know whether to say it's slowed down or sped up, but it is different. The time is different. Just because we are in the same universe doesn't mean all of our times pass at the same rate. The time in the refrigerator is happening slower than the time on the stovetop. So that is what is occurring, and the time in a craft orbiting the Earth is happening at a different rate than the time at something stationary, because time is velocity. Time is velocity divided by acceleration. So, and time is also measured by temperature. So these are things that determine the rate of this rate that time passes. So if you want to make time appear like it's going slower, you have to think faster. And in order to think faster, you have to be well rested. Your mind has to be rested. Especially with REM sleep. Lots of people are lacking in REM sleep. And in my recent video, I postulated that chemicals, pesticides in the chemtrails are causing an acetylcholine issue, whereby time will actually pass slower because the acetylcholine affects the the rate of nerve impulses, so it will change the rate at which you experience time. And I think it would make it so that time feels like it's going too fast. But anyway, I feel like the human can live to 120 years and that we should all be living that long, but we let ourselves be taken over by microorganisms to the extent that we have 10 pounds of microorganisms in our body that are literally killing us and not allowing us to reach our potential. Just like a mistletoe overgrows on a tree and causes the tree to die prematurely, so too are the bacteria in our intestines, sapping our life from us. And yes, it is interesting. The world around us, the plants, the animals, looking deeper, the cells, the proteins, the minerals, the vitamins, the chemicals, everything is as if it is living with the same consciousness that we have. It's just as alive, just as trying to survive, just like we are. And everything seems to have that consciousness, from everything from plants to even cells to bacteria, everything. Even that little fly, I can tell that fly is thinking like I am. It is thinking, it is contemplating, it wants to survive, it's looking for food. Even that fly has the same consciousness that I do. The desire and the willingness and the love to do everything it can to care for that which it has been given, and to those who have been given much, much is required. We have been given a lot as humans, even though we can't see the creatures that are above us, just like the fly doesn't really realize that we are alive. There are things above us, and what I believe is that if we graduate from this life, if we don't fail the test of human life, we will move on to even greater life forms in the future. I believe that the Earth and the Moon are alive, and that the Moon is like the companion of the Earth in the same way that a woman is companion to man on Earth. That the Moon was created from the Earth just like woman was created from man. And if we look into natural history, we are told that a large body impacted the Earth and now resides at the center of the Earth, and the splash that came off of the molten Earth solidified into a moon. An exact symbolism of Adam and Eve, how Adam was put to sleep and a rib taken out and created into his companion. So too, the moon was taken from the earth and made into its companion. And I believe that during a lunar eclipse, the earth consummates its love with the moon. The moon is bombarded by the sun all the time, constantly, 24/7, 365. The only rest that the moon gets from the beating down power of the sun is when the earth blocks the light from the sun, and the moon is allowed to rest in a lunar eclipse. But the earth never gets so lucky to have a rest from the sun, from the slings and arrows of the sun. The earth never gets a rest, besides small portions of it, when the moon blocks the sun for it. So too in life, the man deals with the slings and arrows of life and the enemy, while the woman sometimes is able to rest in the man's shadow. And sometimes the woman can also give the man rest as she takes the brunt of the slings and arrows, just like in a solar eclipse. The universe is very interesting. How big the universe is a very interesting question. Just as the just as carbon dating and radiometric dating, they don't exactly correspond. Carbon dating can only date things to 12,000 years, and radiometric dating supposedly can date things to millions, possibly billions of years old. But is radiometric accurate? Radiometric assumes that the decay rate of atoms has always been the same, but we know that the decay rate of atoms can change, just as the chemical reaction I put in the fridge goes slower than the chemical reaction I put on the stove, so too can the decay of atoms be slowed down with varying temperatures and varying velocities and accelerations. So we don't know if radiometric is correct, and for all we do know, the Bible could be correct in its dating mechanism, saying that 12,000 years might have been the beginning of creation. So too are the distance of stars. Just as carbon dating with radiometric dating, there are two methods to determine the distance of stars. The first method, and the only method, just like carbon dating, the only method that is beyond reasonable doubt is the parallax measurement. Parallax is how far apart the star is when we are on one side of the sun looking at that star, and then when we are at the other side of the sun in half of our orbit away, how does that star look different? There's a little shift between when the Earth is on one side to when the Earth is on the other side. And that shift is because you're looking at the star from a different perspective. We can measure that shift, and we can determine by using triangles of how far that star is from us. But we only can see that stars are up to about 300 light years away. 300 light years. That's not very big. Our solar system is 1 light year, over a light year across. So the universe, as far as we can tell, may only be 300 times the size of our solar system. That might be all. Just as the universe might only be 12,000 years old, the universe might also only be 300 times the size of our solar system. Now, the analogous thing to radiometric dating on scaling the universe is called redshift, and it is how much a star's its spectrum, the light that's coming off of it, how much it is shifted to the red end of the spectrum. Then we can say that stars are thousands or millions of light years away, depending on how red they look. Well, perhaps Just like how atoms can decay at different rates depending on their temperature, so too can light degrade depending on a medium that it is going through. Perhaps some of these quote unquote red-shifted stars are really just behind clouds of dust, and the light is being slowed down, and the frequency is becoming smaller. Thus, the wavelength larger and the color shifted. Perhaps it is just that the light is slowing down that we notice redshift. Perhaps it's not that the universe is so big. So that is a possibility. And light is not necessarily a wave, just as water is not necessarily a wave, though it does, because of water's interaction with itself, with one molecule's hydrogen bonds to another molecule, so too could light not be a wave in itself, but a particle just like water particles, but that these light particles interact with each other, much like how water particles interact with each other to be able to form waves. And perhaps the ether is that medium for light particles, that the light particles form into an ether, and perhaps its ether is all around us. I don't know. But perhaps it is just the light particles' interaction with each other that we can notice wave-like properties of light. So, could light actually be electrons? Could electrons actually be light? There is no experiment that shows that this cannot be the case. And if light is electrons, and if electrons are basically all that matters in atoms, that all of the interactions of atoms with each other is based on their electron configuration, that could there be beings that have no atomic nuclei, that have no neutrons and protons, but that are composed totally of light? And could this be heaven, the dimension that's all around us, that is composed of invisible light, just as electrons are not emitting visible light, but they are made of light, so too could creatures be made of light and yet be ethereal, unable to be touched, because they don't have the world in them. They don't have the nucleus. They don't have the scaffolding. Perhaps that is our life. Perhaps that is why we have this body, is so that we could use natural things to create a scaffold, but that the electron configuration of our bodies, the light, would persist, that it wouldn't go away, but that death is merely the removal of the mold, that this life, that our bodies are a mold for light, and that when our bodies die, that the light continues, the electron configuration of our body continues, and that death is the removal of these electrons. And perhaps that isn't the case, because the electrons would stay with the atoms in our body. But perhaps that electron configuration is recorded in the ether, much like a plant's properties can be recorded in water in homeopathic remedies. Perhaps, perhaps. And perhaps heaven is all around us, and the beings are walking, and we can't touch them because they're made of light. And perhaps when Elijah was carried off into heaven, he walked out of the material world into the world of light. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Nature Hacker Mind. I will see you again shortly.